Every zombie you've ever feared exists because of one forgotten copyright notice on a $114,000 horror film from Pittsburgh. Every rule, every headshot, every barricade, all of it traces back to one night in 1968. Today, I'm counting down the 12 deadliest zombies in movie history, starting with the ones that invented every single rule, the originals. George Romero made Night of the Living Dead in 1968 for $114,000 and accidentally built the entire zombie genre in the process. Before this film, zombies were Haitian folklore, voodoo slaves, shuffling servants controlled by sorcerers. Nobody feared them. Romero changed every single thing. He created reanimated corpses driven by hunger, killed only by destroying the brain, rising from the dead regardless of cause. Heart attack, car crash, gunshot wound. Death is death, and death means reanimation. That template, every zombie movie you've ever watched is still using it right now. But here's where it gets interesting. These zombies are slow. Individually, a child could outrun one. So how did they end entire communities? Attrition. The cemetery opening, where a single shambling figure chases siblings Barbara and Johnny across an open field, tells you exactly how this works. One isn't the problem. A horde with zero stopping mechanism and unlimited recruitment is a completely different conversation, and the film proved it in the most brutal way possible. Ben, the hero, survives the entire night, boards up the farmhouse, makes every hard call, outlasts every threat. He emerges at dawn, and a passing armed posse mistakes him for a zombie and shoots him in the head. His body gets thrown on a bonfire. That's the ending. Romero designed it as a direct commentary on racial violence in America. It hit different in 1968. It still hits. The film accidentally entered public domain because the distributor forgot the copyright notice during distribution. Anyone could freely build on Romero's rules at zero cost, and they did. Every franchise on this list owes him something, but at least his zombies were slow, because the next ones on this list, they can run. Pontypool. Most zombie infections spread through bites. Some spread through blood. This one spreads through the English language. Not a mutated virus. Not a chemical weapon. The specific act of comprehending certain infected English words triggers transformation. Understanding the word is what kills you, which means every safety protocol ever designed for an outbreak is completely useless. Hazmat suits do nothing. Quarantine walls do nothing. The media broadcasting updates about the infection is literally spreading the infection in real time. Here's where it gets weird. Victims don't just turn violent immediately. They go through 3 distinct stages. First, obsessive repetition of a single word, usually a term of endearment. Sweetheart said over and over until it loses all coherent meaning. Second, complete language breakdown. They can't form sentences, can't communicate, like someone whose brain is shutting down section by section. Third, explosive, catastrophic violence. If they fail to pass the infection to someone else, they vomit massive volumes of blood and die. The film's most disturbing moment is technical assistant Laurel Ann fixating on the word missing. She repeats it on a loop, starts imitating the sound of a boiling kettle, then slams her face directly through the glass of a soundproof booth and bites off her own lip. That's stage 3, and the cure is somehow even more unsettling than the disease. You break the word's meaning. Protagonist Grant Mazzy saves his producer by repeating the word kill over and over, reprogramming it to mean kiss, until her symptoms reverse. The infection can't survive in a word that no longer means anything. Non-English speakers are completely immune. The virus only lives inside English comprehension. The film ends with a military countdown, an explosion, and reports confirming the outbreak has reached England. Nobody won. The language is already out there. Every other zombie on this list you can outrun, outsmart, or outshoot. These ones spread the moment you hear about them. The next entry gave every single zombie that speed problem an entirely new dimension. The Hungries. Most zombies on this list want to kill humanity. The Hungries, from the girl with all the gifts, have a much more disturbing ambition. They want to replace it. The infection is a mutated strain of Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, a real parasitic fungus. In nature, it infects ants, hijacks their nervous systems, forces them to climb to the optimal height for spore dispersal, then kills them. The filmmakers hired a real Ophiocordyceps biologist as a scientific consultant. They took the actual biology and scaled it to humans. First-generation Hungries are terrifying enough. Fast, violent, dormant when unstimulated, standing in frozen crowds across empty London streets waiting for a trigger. A sound, a scent, any movement. The blocker gel that masks human scent is the only thing keeping survivors alive in the open. But here's the thing. The fungus evolved. Second-generation Hungries are children born born to infected mothers who ate their way out of the womb during birth. These children are fully intelligent, fully emotional. They can hold conversations, form attachments, feel love, and still carry an irresistible craving for human flesh that they have to actively fight to control. Feral packs of them hunt cooperatively through London's ruins with coordinated tactics no first-generation hungry could ever manage. The film was shot on location in Pripyat, Ukraine, the real abandoned city near Chernobyl. Nobody had to build a post-apocalyptic set because one already existed, and then it ends in a way no other zombie film has ever attempted. Melanie, the second-generation protagonist, deliberately ignites a massive fungal spore tower covering the BT Tower in London. She releases airborne spores across the entire planet. Every remaining uninfected human will turn. She locks her teacher, the last uninfected survivor, inside a sealed mobile laboratory. And in the final shot, Miss Justineau teaches the alphabet to a classroom of feral hybrid children through glass. The old world, literally teaching its replacement. No other zombie film asks that question. Not how do we survive, but why should we? If you think an infection that ends humanity by replacing it is disturbing, wait until you see what the next entry does in just 12 seconds. Dawn of the Dead. Zack Snyder's 2004 directorial debut opens with one of the greatest sequences in horror history, and it takes place in a suburb so quiet, so normal, that the violence hits like a physical impact. Nurse Anna comes home from a shift. Neighbor girl Vivian skates in the driveway. Anna and her husband have a peaceful night. At dawn, Vivian appears in their bedroom doorway, lips torn completely away, mouth soaked in blood. She stands still for one full beat. Then she lunges. Her husband dies. He reanimates in seconds. He chases Anna through the bathroom window into a neighborhood that is already gone. Helicopters, explosions, ambulances running over civilians. A Johnny Cash song plays over a title sequence mixing real riot footage with zombie outbreak imagery. The world ended overnight and nobody saw it coming. Here's the thing that made audiences lose their minds in 2004. These zombies run, not shuffle, not lumber. Full human sprint, reanimated dead, with permanently activated muscles and zero self-preservation instinct, moving at the speed of a panicking person because that is exactly what they look like. Reanimation happens in under a minute from death. James Gunn's screenplay deliberately left the cause completely unexplained, which was the right call. There is no origin story that makes a sprinting dead person more frightening than just watching one. Over 50 makeup artists created approximately 3,000 individual zombie applications across production. Real amputees portrayed the most severely damaged zombies for physical authenticity. Makeup designer David Anderson researched actual human decomposition through medical textbooks and crime scene photographs before designing a single face. The film's darkest scene doesn't involve a chase or a horde. Andre's infected wife dies in childbirth and reanimates mid-delivery. Anna finds the zombie baby. She executes it with one shot and never mentions it again. The film just moves on, which is somehow worse. George Romero hated it. It sort of lost its reason for being, he said. More of a video game. The film grossed $102 million on a $26 million budget. It holds Zack Snyder's highest Rotten Tomatoes score at 77%. But if sprinting dead people seem manageable, the next entry starts with 5.4 billion confirmed casualties before the movie even begins. I Am Legend. The Darkseekers didn't start as monsters. They started as a cancer cure. Dr. Alice Crippen genetically re-engineered the measles virus to attack and destroy cancerous cells. It worked. 10,009 patients went into full remission. The medical community called it a miracle. Then the virus mutated into an airborne killer, and the miracle became the most lethal pathogen in human history. The numbers are almost impossible to process. 90% of Earth's 6 billion people died outright from the Crippen virus. 9%, roughly 588 million people, mutated into Darkseekers. 1% were naturally immune. Robert Neville is one of them, alone in a completely empty Manhattan, broadcasting survival radio messages every single day to nobody. But here's where the Darkseekers separate themselves from everything else on this list. They are not mindless. They possess superhuman strength, permanently activated adrenal glands granting enhanced speed, wall climbing ability, and a sensitivity to UV light so extreme that direct sunlight causes immediate cellular destruction. They sleep in pitch-dark buildings during the day and hunt in absolute darkness at night. Neville survives by following rigid daylight-only rules. The moment those rules break, he nearly dies, every single time. And then the mannequin scene happens. Neville had been setting snare traps for Darkseekers for 3 years. One morning, he discovers a mannequin positioned in a snare trap identical to his own design. The alpha male studied him, watched his patterns, replicated his exact methodology, and used it against him. That is not zombie behavior. That is predator behavior. The alternate ending, now widely considered the more faithful version of the story, goes further. The alpha male isn't attacking Neville's lab to destroy him. He's trying to retrieve the female Darkseeker Neville captured for experiments. He presses foreheads with her through the glass in a gesture of unmistakable tenderness. Neville realizes he has spent 3 years torturing and experimenting on a civilization rebuilding itself in the dark. He is the monster. He is the legend. The studio cut that ending because test audiences found it too upsetting. Writer Akiva Goldsman later admitted the change was made, in his own words, with crass commercialism in mind. The Brooklyn Bridge evacuation scene alone cost $5 million, used 1,000 extras, and required sign-off from 14 separate government agencies. If the Darkseekers feel terrifying because of what they became, the next entry is terrifying because of what was always inside the building, REC. Most people who watch this film think they're watching a zombie outbreak. They aren't. They're watching a demonic possession that learned to function as a communicable disease. The truth is buried in the penthouse of a quarantined Barcelona apartment building. A Vatican agent named Father Albelda brought a possessed girl, Tristana Medeiros, there to study the phenomenon scientifically. He discovered that demonic possession operates through an infectious enzyme transmitted via bodily fluids. Hell's biology, functioning exactly like a pathogen. When his experiments failed, infected rats escaped into the building's walls, and everything collapsed from there. That distinction matters enormously. This isn't a virus. It isn't a fungus. Standard outbreak protocols do nothing because the infection isn't biological in origin. It's theological. Scripture recitation can temporarily stall an infected person. The demon can see through its victim's eyes and communicate through their mouths. A hazmat suit stops nothing. Understanding what it actually is takes the entire film and 2 sequels to piece together. Here's what makes the production genuinely terrifying beyond the lore. The actors were never given the complete script. They did not know their characters' fates before filming those scenes. The Medeiros creature's makeup was prepared in a completely separate location, so the lead actors would never see it before the finale. The night vision sequence at the end was shot in genuine, complete darkness. The cinematographer monitored through his viewfinder while every actor on set was effectively blind, feeling their way through a pitch-black apartment. The result is one of horror's most devastating endings. Night vision green. Skeletal blind Tristana Medeiros emerges from the darkness holding a hammer, hunting purely by sound. Reporter Angela grabs the falling camera, scrambles backward across the floor, trips, and is dragged screaming into absolute blackness. No rescue, no twist, no final girl moment, just darkness. And that's before you account for what the infection actually does to children. Younger victims show symptoms resembling tonsillitis first, slower development, which means a sick child showing a sore throat and swollen glands in that building is not a sick child, and nobody knows until it is already too late. The Spanish government quarantined the building in the film and left everyone inside to die. That was their entire solution. But if a demonic infection that looks like a virus is unsettling, wait until you see what happens when you put thousands of regular zombies on a moving train with nowhere to run. Train to Busan. Every zombie film on this list traps survivors in a building, a farmhouse, an apartment, a mall, a lab. Train to Busan traps them in a metal tube moving at 180 miles per hour with nowhere to go except forward, through more zombies. A bioengineered virus, origin never officially named, turns victims into sprinting, contorting horrors whose transformation speed depends entirely on where the bite lands. Neck bite? 5 seconds. You have 5 seconds to say goodbye to whoever is standing next to you. Extremity bite? Maybe minutes. The body horror choreography, developed by director Yeon Sang-ho using his animation background, involves violent seizures and full spinal contortion, the infected snapping backwards into shapes that don't look like anything a living person should be capable of. But here's the tactical detail that separates these zombies from every other fast-moving horde. They are effectively blind in the dark, complete darkness, complete dormancy. They mill around aimlessly. They stop registering threats. When passengers cover the train windows with newspapers, the zombies outside press against the glass and do absolutely nothing useful. The film's greatest set piece exploits this perfectly. Survivors need to move through multiple zombie-infested train cars. The windows between cars face open sky, flooding the carriages with light, zombies fully activated and swarming. But between stations, there are tunnels, complete darkness. Survivors time their movements to the tunnel windows, sprinting through car after car in the seconds of blackness, fighting through the transition zones where light bleeds back in. It is the most creative use of a zombie weakness in any film on this list, and then it earns its tears in a way that almost nothing else in this genre manages. Seok Woo, the father, is bitten saving his daughter. He walks to the end of the locomotive alone, zombifying in real time, and stands at the edge as his memories surface, holding his newborn newborn daughter for the first time, her first smile. He falls. The film doesn't cut away. Made for $8.5 million. Grossed $98.5 million worldwide. Premiered at the Cannes Film Festival. Holds 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. The second highest score on their entire 100 Best Zombie Movies list. It stars Gong Yoo, who you know from Squid Game, and Ma Dong-seok, who is now literally in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A Korean zombie film made on an $8.5 million budget outperformed and emotionally destroyed everything Hollywood produced in the genre that year. But if fast zombies trapped in a confined space are terrifying, the next entry doesn't confine itself to a single location. It uses your body as the weapon against itself. Deadites. Every zombie on this list is a pathogen. Deadites are none of those things. They are ancient demons from another dimension wearing human bodies like suits, summoned by reading passages from the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, a book bound in human skin and written in human blood. A deadite possesses supernatural strength, capable of ripping a head out with the spine attached. They levitate, shapeshift, mimic the voices of loved ones, and use the host's memories as psychological weapons. They can possess living humans, dead bodies, animals, and inanimate objects. Ash Williams' own severed hand operated independently against him for an entire film. Deadites are sadistic and theatrical. They prefer psychological torture over efficient killing, which counterintuitively buys survivors time to fight back. But nobody has fought harder than Ash, and he has spent 4 decades barely surviving each encounter by the skin of his teeth and his chainsaw hand. The original Evil Dead was made for $350,000 in a real abandoned Tennessee cabin. Joel Cohen was the assistant editor 3 years before Blood Simple. Bruce Campbell put his family's property up as collateral. Stephen King called it the ultimate experience in grueling terror. That quote alone got the film distributed. Evil Dead Rise in 2023 introduced the Marauder, 3 possessed bodies fused together into a single grotesque entity, and grossed $145 million on a $19 million budget. One weakness: sunlight forces the demon to release its host. One weakness against levitation, shape-shifting, telekinesis, and a book that cannot be destroyed. World War Z, the highest-grossing zombie film ever made, didn't get there by making scarier zombies. It got there by making smarter ones. World War Z's defining innovation isn't speed, though these zombies move at elite human sprint from the moment they turn. It isn't infection time, though 12 seconds is the fastest confirmed bite-to-zombie transformation in mainstream cinema. Its behavior? Ant colony swarm intelligence. Instinctively coordinating without communication, without leadership. Thousands of bodies moving toward a single objective with perfect collective efficiency. The Jerusalem Wall scene demonstrates exactly what that means. Within minutes of a crowd singing near the wall, zombies begin stacking themselves into body pyramids of approximately 5,000 individual digital agents, cascading over the top in waves. A wall that took months to build falls in minutes. The VFX team used their proprietary Alice crowd simulation system with 24 distinct body types generating over 3,000 crowd variations from motion capture data. That is not exaggerated for effect. That is the system working as designed. These zombies don't eat. Every bite is purely about maximizing infection spread. They are a biological delivery system optimizing for total coverage. Their weakness: terminally ill carriers are completely invisible to the horde. Jerry Lane injects himself with a live pathogen at the WHO facility in Cardiff and walks through a corridor of active zombies. Every single one ignores him completely. The production was legendarily catastrophic. Shooting began before the script was finished. The original third act, a Battle of Moscow sequence, was scrapped entirely. Damon Lindelof and Drew Goddard rewrote 60 pages in 3 weeks for an estimated $20 million in additional reshoots. Final gross: $540 million worldwide. Still the all-time zombie box office record. A David Fincher-directed sequel was officially canceled in 2019.28 days later. The zombie genre was dead by 2002, not metaphorically, commercially, critically, culturally dead. Nobody was making serious zombie films. Nobody was watching them. The genre had collapsed under the weight of its own cliches, and Hollywood had moved on entirely. Then Danny Boyle shot 28 days later on a consumer mini DV camera for pennies, and everything came back. The rage virus was created at Cambridge Primate Research Center, engineered from a modified Ebola genome as a delivery system for an experimental anger inhibitor. The science failed at the animal testing stage. Animal rights activists broke into the lab and freed an infected chimpanzee over the direct warnings of a researcher. The chimp attacked. The activist was infected. 28 days later, Jim wakes up alone in an empty London hospital and walks out into streets with 0 living people in them. The entire United Kingdom fell in under a month. Here's what makes the infected categorically different from everything else on this list. They are not dead. They are living humans whose entire neurological function has been consumed by pure, undiluted rage. No hunger, no strategy, no goal beyond total destruction of anything uninfected within eyeline. Infection takes 10 to 20 seconds depending on exposure volume. A single drop of blood entering an eye is sufficient. One drop. The film proves this in its most devastating scene. Frank, the father, stands outside a military blockade while a decomposing body overhead releases a single drop of blood that falls directly into his open eye. He has seconds of full awareness before it takes hold, enough to look at his daughter, enough to say, "I love you." Then he turns and has to be shot by soldiers while she watches. The infected eventually starve. They don't eat. Rage drives them to attack and spread, not to feed, and without caloric intake, a living human body shuts down in weeks. The original UK infected died of malnutrition approximately 5 weeks after day 28. That built-in expiration date is the only structural weakness in the entire pathogen. Robert Carlyle's Dawn in 28 weeks later demonstrated something else entirely. He used a weapon. He hid from firebombing by submerging himself underwater. He tracked his own children across a city with apparent deliberate intent. The sequel never fully explains the variants. Some infected just retain more than others. Cinematographer Anthony Dodd Mantle shot the entire film on consumer digital cameras as a deliberate artistic choice. The empty London streets required police to close roads at 4 a.m. in 1-hour windows with 10 cameras running simultaneously to capture enough usable footage before civilian traffic resumed. The result looks like documentary footage of actual collapse. The film holds 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is directly credited by the industry with making the zombie genre commercially viable again, enabling everything that followed. Dawn of the Dead 2004, Shaun of the Dead, The Walking Dead, World War Z, every single one. Boyle framed it as his response to 9/11, an attempt to capture what total civilizational collapse actually feels like from street level. And if a virus that collapsed an entire nation in a month sounds like the ceiling for this list, the next entry confirmed global extinction before the credits roll. Resident Evil. Every zombie on this list represents a threat with a ceiling. The T-virus has zero ceiling. It mutates continuously, infects across species, and by the end of the Resident Evil film franchise, it accomplished something no other entry on this list ever managed. It confirmed global extinction. Not implied, not suggested. The later films show Earth as a desert wasteland with nearly all of humanity gone. 6 films, over $1 billion at the box office, and the villain wins. Here's what makes the T-virus categorically more dangerous than anything else here. It doesn't produce one type of zombie. It produces an escalating ecosystem of biological nightmares. Basic infected are the floor. Then lickers emerge. Skinless humanoids with exposed brains. Prehensile tongues capable of punching through body armor and wall-climbing ability. Cerberus are zombie dogs, whose skulls split vertically into layered maws of fangs. Nemesis stands over 7 feet tall, armed with a railgun and rocket launcher, programmed with a single target and zero capacity to be stopped. Every mutation is worse than the last. There is no ceiling because the virus doesn't have one. The T-virus cross-infects dogs, birds, insects, and marine life across the sequels. Every living thing becomes a delivery system. Greg Nicotero and Howard Berger, the same practical effects team behind The Walking Dead, created the zombie makeup. Capcom executives appeared as background zombies due to a shortage of extras on the day. 6 films, $1.2 billion worldwide. A full reboot is scheduled for 2026. But if a virus that confirmed total human extinction is the most devastating threat on this list, the final entry is worse, because at least the T-virus can theoretically be stopped. Return of the Living Dead. Everything you know about killing zombies is wrong, and this film will prove it systematically. Headshot doesn't work. In the film's most blackly comedic scene, warehouse worker Frank and his boss Bert split a reanimated cadaver completely in half with a pickaxe through the skull. Both halves keep moving. The torso drags itself across the floor by its fingernails. The legs walk independently in the opposite direction. They call the funeral home next door for help, because what else do you do? Burning them? Worse. Cremating a trioxin zombie releases the compound back into the atmosphere as gas, which rises into rain clouds and falls across the surrounding area, reanimating every corpse in every cemetery it touches. The film's solution is a military nuclear strike on Louisville, Kentucky. The final shot reveals the detonation released even more trioxin into rain clouds. The credits roll. Nobody won. The problem is now larger than before the solution. There is no winning condition. There is only escalation. But indestructibility is only half of what makes them the deadliest entry on this list. These zombies are fully intelligent. They speak fluent English. The Horde uses a police radio to calmly request more paramedics, then more cops, luring fresh victims directly to their location. That is not shambling mindless hunger. That is a trap. A captured female zombie, strapped to a mortuary table, looks her captors in the eyes and explains everything. She can feel herself rotting. Every second of being dead is unbearable pain spread across every decomposing nerve ending simultaneously. Eating the brains of the living releases chemicals that temporarily ease it. She doesn't want to kill, she needs to. That scene is the origin of the entire brines trope. Every zombie impression, every Halloween costume catchphrase traces directly back to this one strapped-down torso explaining her agony in complete sentences. Not Romero, here. The film was written and directed by Dan O'Bannon, the screenwriter of Alien, on the single condition that he could completely invert every Romero rule. The trioxin compound is a deliberate reference to 2,4,5-T, the real herbicide component of Agent Orange. Every other entry on this list has a weakness: a headshot, sunlight, darkness, starvation, a pathogen, a prayer. Return of the Living Dead has 0, and the zombies know it. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.